Then I would take you into the sitting room, which is where Mr. Borden was murdered. And I would tell you the story of the key on the mantelpiece. We keep a key, an old-fashioned skeleton key, on the mantelpiece in that room. And the reason why is because about a year prior to the murders, the house was broken into. And again, Lizzie and Bridget were the only ones home when this happened. Lizzie said she found a nail in the back door. And all that was taken, really, was some of Mrs. Borden's jewelry and some cash that belonged to her. Nothing that belonged to anybody else was taken. Now, the weird thing about that is Mrs. Borden kept her jewelry in a box upstairs in her bedroom, in her dressing room. How would anybody know exactly where to look for that? But that was all that was taken. Mr. Borden suspected that it was Lizzie who had done it because they were always fighting about money. And so he started locking his bedroom door. But he would leave the key in the sitting room on the mantelpiece where the whole family could see it all day long and be reminded of that. And we think it was kind of a warning to Lizzie, like, almost saying, you can go and do it again, but this time there'll be consequences. And you would get to sit on the replica of the sofa that is exactly where Mr. Borden was murdered. A lot of people like to do that. We have a little play hatchet that they can sit and take pictures of his murder. You can look at the crime scene photos in that room. And I would tell you, 11 that he received 11 blows to the front of his face and head, and then would go into the hallway and start up the stairs. I would talk about the neighbors who came over and what happened when they found Abby's body upstairs. Lizzie sent Bridget and a family friend to go upstairs to look for Mrs. Borden after one of the police officers asked her, "Where's Mrs. Borden?" And she said, "I don't know, but I think I heard her come home and go upstairs." Now, according to Lizzie, Abby had a note and gone out. So that's where everybody thought she was until Lizzie said, "I think I heard her come home and go upstairs." So the two ladies went upstairs, and as you're coming up the stairs, if you turn to the left, you're going to be looking right into the guest room. And you can see straight under that bed. And that's where Mrs. Borden was laying on the other side of the bed, in between the bed and the bureau. So that's the next room we'd go into, and I'd get into that little space, and it's about 32 inches, and Mrs. Borden was kind of a big lady. And I would talk a little bit about kind of specifics about what we think happened during her murder, because she supposedly was kneeling down. It was thought that she was kneeling down, and that the first blow to the hatchet, she was actually facing her killer, and that she tried to turn and crawl under the bed. And she was such a big lady that she couldn't get under the bed, and she got trapped in that spot. And that's how her murderer was able to come into that area and get her.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then...
Go ahead, James.
Oh, I was going to say, wasn't there use of Ouija boards or seances in the Borden house as well at one time?
Absolutely. They're probably still doing it. What started to happen was a lot of people, a lot of guests who were going to visit and do the overnights, particularly for the spiritual activity, the ghostly activity, would bring Ouija boards into the house. And it got to the point where the house was just kind of really active all the time, and it was uncomfortable. And someone suggested that we should keep one Ouija board at the house all the time and have our guests use that instead of bringing their own in. And Leanne had found, the owner had found a Ouija board. I think she said she found it in the basement. It was from 1945. So it was an older board. And that's the one that they keep now at the house for the guests to use. So they probably still are using it. It's funny, though, because when I would do the nighttime tours, the guests would want to use the Ouija board, and I'd get them set up with it, and it wouldn't work if I was in the room. And this happened over and over again, and I'd walk out of the room and find something else to do, and it would start working for them. And I have no idea why.
James, do you know why? Maybe it wouldn't work for her? if she was in the room?
That's a good one. I don't know. Maybe there was spirits in there that didn't want you in there, or maybe you had a spirit that was with you that protects you and wouldn't let it work in fear of other spirits coming in that could be good ones or bad ones to mess with you. So in a way, maybe you had a spirit of a loved one protecting you, wouldn't let it work while you were in the room. I mean, that would be very plausible. You know,
I would like to think that.
What's that?
I said I would like to think that. It's funny because one group, and it was young women, all in their 20s or so, came in, and we had that problem. By now I had gotten used to it. I was like, sure, you can use the Ouija board. And they were like, well, you stay with us. And I was like, it's not going to work. It's not going to work while I'm in the room. And they tried, and they tried, and they tried. And I was like, look, I'm going to go find something to do. Hope this works out for you. I went into the kitchen, and I was just cleaning some cups or doing something, and all of a sudden, and they were right next door, like the room was right next door that they were sitting in. They all started to yell and scream, and I ran to the door, and I was like, what's the matter? And they're all looking at me with these great big wide eyes, and the girl said, we asked after you left, we asked if the Ouija board wouldn't answer us because you were in the room, and it said yes.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, I have no idea what that was about.
Now, has anybody communicated with Lizzie Borden with the Ouija board? I tell you what, I don't like Ouija boards. I think they're very evil, but that's just my impression and my feelings. But any of the guests ever communicate with Lizzie Borden?
There have been some guests who believe that they have communicated with Lizzie, yes. Yeah, and they get very excited about that.
Did they ever share what message they got or anything?
They, you know, of course, everybody asks, you know, did you commit these murders? And it's funny because they get sort of an evasive answer about it. They never get a yes or no. They get kind of an evasive answer. But they'll ask other questions that, you know, about things that Lizzie would have known or things that she would have done. Like, you know, did you give your father a gold ring on his birthday? And they get a yes answer because she did. She used to wear a very small gold ring that I think he had given it to her. And on his birthday, she gave it back to him and put it on his pinky. And that was the only item of jewelry that Andrew ever wore, other than to carry a pocket watch. He wore that ring.
No.
So they answer, you know, she answers those kinds of questions. A lot of the time, and the thing is, in my experience, I only experienced Lizzie really at the house a couple of times. Around her birthday was a time that she would seem to be around a lot more often, was around her birthday and around her sister's birthday, I think. But mostly hers, and around August 4th. But the house gets very active on August the 4th anyway. Did you ever see any physical ghosts or anything while you were there? I saw a couple of things that, not 100% sure what they were. I was rushing around one day getting ready for an evening tour, and it was literally like 3 different groups of ghost hunter types. It was all paranormal investigators. And I was going up the back stairs to do something up in the attic where Bridget's room is, and we have 2 other guest rooms up there. And as I came around the corner to go up the stairs, I stopped on the first stair because as I was looking up the stairwell, I saw this shadow form, is the only way I can think of to explain it. And it was going up the stairs and very quickly into Andrew and Abby's bedroom. And I know I saw it. So I just ran straight up to the attic where I was going in the first place, and I left that room alone for a while.
Now, James, you got a couple questions to ask her?
Yeah, I was curious. Because I was there a long time ago, a friend of mine, and they were friends with somebody that worked there. And we was upstairs, and I'm thinking it was Lizzie's room. We were in there, we went into this other room down the hall, like the next one, and we heard a noise, and it sounded like there was a little wooden stand. It had a front drawer, and it sounded like that drawer opened up. And there was nobody upstairs, just me and him. And we went in there, and that drawer was open. Now, we can't prove that, a spirit did that or nothing, but there was nobody else upstairs. Have you ever had any activity like that where drawers were opening up and stuff like that?
Actually, yes, we have. Now, do you remember if you were on the second floor or the third floor when that happened? I'm asking for a reason.
I'm thinking it was the second floor, but it was a long time ago.
Okay.
I think
we have had a couple of instances. One thing that did occur in Lizzie's room. Now, I was not there personally for this, but I saw the film, and there's no mistaking what happened. We had a mirror in the cabinet in her room that we keep locked with all the books in it. And it was pretty securely leaning against, the back shelf. And I believe the shelves have those little ridges in them so that things won't fall down. And the mirror was resting there. There was a group that came in from a magazine that was looking to do a video documentary about Lizzie and about the ghosts. So they were filming this thing, and as I was watching this film, and unfortunately the show never aired, which is really sad. They said something. They were in her bedroom, and one of the investigators said something to her. It wasn't a question, but just, Lizzie, are you here? Or, something like that. And that mirror moved. Like, I can't even explain. It kind of rocked back and forth against the shelf, but you could see it very obviously moving. And the case was locked. It had been locked for days. No one had been in there to clean it. And this mirror just kind of moved. Now, am I allowed to talk about folks who have done TV shows at the house?
You are, but guess what? We're going to go for a break again.
Okay.
And then we'll have you for another half an hour. And when we come back, yes, you can talk about other groups that gone through it. I want to talk to you about if ghost hunters, have gone in there and what have they done. So we'll talk all about that when we come back. Hey, go get yourself something to drink, something to eat. We'll be back in about 3.5 minutes. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio. And also, check out the website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com. Now, if you want to hear us on your local radio station, do me a favor. Call up your local radio station and say, hey, I want to hear Night Dreams Talk Radio on your station. Please do that for me. Well, we'll be back with James, Colleen, and myself here in just a few minutes. You're listening to me, Gary, on Night Dreams Talk Radio.
Life's journey, some ask themselves why the big time is passing by. They want it all and they want it now. No need to wonder how or why. They decide to make a connection with the bearer of life from the other side. It's a self-centered new world reflection. It's a one-way ticket for a hell of a ride. They're making a deal. Whether down at the crossroads or Hollywood and Vine, they're making a deal. Gonna have it all for a moment in time. You may be a kingpin drug dealer who wants the competition out of the way. You may be an elite politician who wants total control and a power play. You may be an aspiring entertainer who wants to have their name in lights. You may be a four-star general who wants the upper hand in a global fight. They're all making a deal with the chief light bearer from the other side.